You want civil discourse? You better convince the media companies to stop monetizing the lack of civil discourse. We live in the most angry society. I think it's capitalism.
Can we blame
Absolutely, you can. Yes.
Moj Mahdara,
an entrepreneur,
speaker, business figure,
an innovator,
founder of the Iranian Diaspora Collective,
an active investor,
and a leader in the beauty industry.
You have a wealth gap now that is the most obscene we have ever seen. People are pissed when they're not taken care of. We live in a time of zero consensus right now.
How do we pull people out of their bubble?
Do we all need to be in the same bubble? You want to see the darkness? But I've seen it. I've seen it inside of that darkness. And the thing is, it's uglier than you ever imagined.
I write a book on civil discourse. I have all these principles in my head I'm trying to run back all the time. And there's still moments where it's just like, sometimes you make a remark and you just like, get a little bit uncivil. And it's just like a part of the human experience. But at the same time, do you not think that we should be striving for that level of excellence? Like, is that not the goal? Like, to build these philosophical frameworks in our mind that make us better people, make us, I don't know, stronger connectors as humans?
So I'll send you the professor's name. The concept that he writes about is called moral licensing. And I think kindness and niceness and generosity starts like in your home, in your neighborhood, like in your like immediate like group. And so like if you want to be all of those things, my suggestion to everyone is to start like with the most immediate people in your life that you impact the most, like your family or your friends or your coworkers or like your neighbors. Like all of my neighbors know me. They all know that they can like call me if they forgot to turn something off. Like all of them know that I will go feed their dog. But like some of these folks, like I guarantee you, they do not know their neighbors, And so like, I don't know. It's just, it's one of those things where like, I don't think you can live up to this level of virtue signaling that everyone's trying to do by being agreeable.
So, okay, I like this. But if we agree that being agreeable is actually part of this problem, then what does that mean for this challenge of people are posing of like, I'm just asking questions and there is no harm in that and so on. But, we've talked about this a little bit, right? Like J.K. Rowling is an interesting example of that. She comes out and she said, with this giant platform that she has and says, I'm just asking questions. And I just want to make sure that we are asking ourselves, what if we're wrong? What if the way that we are moving forward in society and the popular opinion is actually incorrect someday? Shouldn't we have people who are challenging and pushing those questions instead of being agreeable and just going with what the mob says?
I mean, I am not a J.K. Rowling fan. I never read her books. I'm not because I'm like anti-J. I just don't, like I'm not a fantasy person. Like I never was like anything fantasy. Maybe Star Wars, but that's it. She never, like, her work never spoke to me. When she starts, like, blabbing, I'm like, you don't seem like an expert on happiness, joy, humanity, or any of those things. So, like, I'm not sure why we're even taking her so seriously. But I get it. She has a huge platform. She's saying things that are flawed in terms of basic human respect. Like, even if she doesn't understand it, it's like, you don't understand something, that's fine. But, like, you can appreciate someone else's space and safety and identity and the way they want and choose to express themselves. So I don't know. J.K. Rowling's kind of a weird one because she doesn't seem like I was listening to the podcast. It's like, she's like unhappy marriage, abuse. She's like, she has all this trauma.
Yeah.
So like, she doesn't seem like someone that's like centered from a place of like mental wellness to begin with.
But that question, right, of like, I'm just asking questions.
But she's not asking questions. She's trying to she's a TERF, right? She is.
Yeah. So this term TERF, trans exclusionary radical feminist.
Yeah.
And
that's her.
When we were planning on speaking today, we had a really interesting conversation on feminism and this like, a lot of women trying to define what feminism should be and making it exclusionary.
Not a lot of women, just only certain women.
Only certain women.
Yes.
Yes. Those women being
white women.
White heterosexual women.
Yes. Well, they love feminism. It's like a real thing. There's not a lot of acknowledgement around where the largest sort of momentum for the feminist movement came from, which is Black women. There's not a lot of acknowledgement around minority inclusion, gay rights. And so feminism on some level has been kind of like appropriated by like a woke situation where it's like, to be feminist, you have to be beautiful, you have to be a great mom, you have to be skinny, you have to be upper middle class, you have to be for sure, like not just educated, but like a good school. You can't just be like a blue collar woman working at Walmart and be feminist. Like, she's not a feminist. She's just, right? So like feminism has been appropriated by classism, sexism, racism, homophobia, like all the things.
Yeah.
Which is like, again, the Trump election. That whole thing happened because like, you know, the patriarchy hidden in the body of matriarchy is like.
But part of me thinks that election happens because it's a lot of people who had opinions that they were oppressing. That when we were going around saying, like, people were going around saying it's going to be a landslide, that Hillary Clinton will win and the Democrats will win, and no, who's going to vote for Trump? I don't know anyone voting for Trump. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh no, everyone that I, like thought wouldn't was closeted, right? And was actually had opinions that they were not sharing with the public and they weren't sharing with me or their family members and so on. And that's problematic, right? Like, that's part of what I advocate for in civil discourse is like, you have to be able to have these conversations with family members and friends, because otherwise you end up with like people hiding their opinions and something like that happens and it comes out of nowhere, supposedly.
It wasn't a landslide first. Let's start there. Let's like agree that was
was
not a landslide. There was like millions and millions.
But there were more people that voted for him than I think the mainstream media was going to give credit for.
He's a charismatic guy who has a jet. Like, that makes sense. It made sense to me. As soon as he started running, I'm like, this guy's definitely a problem. Like, I was not one of those people that was like, never. I was like, 100% this guy has a real shot. He has a fucking jet that has his name on it. Like, he's having a press conference from the, do you know what I'm saying? Like, our society is like, wow, that's like amazing. Like, that was the thing. He has like his wife and the thing and all the buildings with his name, and that makes sense. We're capitalists. Like, we're not electing someone based on how good they are. We're voting a president for like the largest capitalistic society known to man. So they chose
him.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I suppose. But there's another part of me that also says that we as American citizens are supposed to be voting for people that we believe are the best representations of us as our society.
But like, when have we done that?
It's a great question.
I don't know.
Fair. I guess it's idealistic to say that it should be that way.
That's why I'm like a bigger fan of just like local. Like, I'm like a big fan now of like my local government, my local leaders, my local nonprofits, I can't impact the country, but I can impact like my neighborhood, my schools, like, just, I don't know. I don't feel like I can make a difference on like a national, like, especially now in this moment. Like, do I think I can make a difference in American politics? Definitely not.
No, but I get it on the local level. Something that I think is interesting on the local level is like, of course, not only what we do in our circles and with our family members and our friends, but also the next generation, the kids that we raise. So you have 2 kids right now. Congratulations on a newborn as well. I have many younger siblings that range from like elementary age through to middle school and soon to be high school. And one of the topics that's come up with different parents as well is what is being taught to young kids right now. Like, of course, it's always a focus, like, how are we teaching kids? How are we preparing them for the world and so on that they're going to come into? But one of the hot topics, of course, right now, and what people are divided on is like, what are we teaching kids about gender and sex ed, and how do we teach that content to kids right now? And it's interesting, like, seeing progressive parents that all of a sudden become really conservative on those types of topics. And, there's, of course, like, I think from my own anecdotal experience, I think on like the dichotomy of like what the West is pushing and what, wanting to be progressive versus like the traditional Iranian upbringing and like what that society kind of like has ingrained in you, and watching that balance come to fruition. But I'm curious, from your perspective now, raising kids, what is important to you to be taught, and like how do you as an educator walk that balance for young kids?
I think my priorities for my son are more about his own agency and self-love and understanding who he is. I think you can have a lot of love and acceptance for others when you have it for yourself. I think it's very difficult to have any level of compassion or empathy for others if you don't have that for yourself. I'm queer, I'm non-binary. I expect him to ask me a zillion million questions, but parents having a bad time because they don't want their children to learn about gender, I find that weird.
It's not that they don't want to learn about gender. It's
Right.
that they don't know, especially a heterosexual parent, like that's grown up with normal upbringing. That
Sure.
There's men, there's women, so on. And now you start getting more granular, and you start getting into, well, there are people, and some people have penises, and some have vaginas, and that is starting to like encroach on what some parents. I mean, this is in like the cultural zeitgeist, but like what some parents view as like this is okay, and it's starting to become like this divisive topic.
That like they don't want their kids to go to a gender neutral or a they them school.
Seems like it.
I mean, fine. Like I feel like if they don't want that, then they can
But
go
that
other places. But
to me, like we can't just say like
only
fine,
because
let
like
them.
to me
you know?
it's like in the sense like someone will be like, oh, like Iran, that's like such a traditional culture. I'm like, no, it's not. Like guys there hold hands. That culture's like kisses each other 3 times on the cheek. I've never seen men wear more like flamboyant clothing and self-expressed as like South Asia, Asia, Middle East. Like I think gender fluidity and gender expression has been more closer to like non-binary self-expressed than this like women's bathroom, men's bathroom binary like situation. Like I think that is a smaller percentage of time in the history of man. I mean, if you look at whether it's a Victorian era, if you look at time, but I think heterosexual or cis orientedness, like that's just like a political agenda. I don't know that it makes anyone happy or that it's like working for anyone. But sure, I can like look, but these are the same people that are like they're like, but I want them to know about like the, civil rights movement, or I want them to understand like are these like where do you stop? Like you don't want them to know about gender, but do you want them to know about slavery? But do you want them to know about the Holocaust? It's like this is life. Like this is the reality of what we live in. Like, do you want them to know that like yes.
But that's the question precisely, right? It's like at a young age, how much of that, and I guess I'm asking you this, right? Like at a young age, how much of that do you want to be feeding a child?
I mean, I feed him everything.
And you do. So it's like
Yes.
unfiltered, and
He
you have these
knows why
conversations.
there's Martin Luther King Day. He knows why there's Gay Pride Month. He knows what the mullahs are in Iran and why his parents cry and are always on the phone in the middle of the night. Yes, he knows because he should know. Like, why should he not know? Like, I tell him in child language, but I explain to him there are bad people doing things to women because they want to not put on a scarf, Or I explain that there was a time and a place in where people believed that they were entitled to own other people. And like, I think he should know these things because it's a part of history. And to not, like, it just seems weird to me. Like, I want him to know that like the environment's in danger. I want him to know that like whales are being hunted. I want him to know that like, because like because if you don't teach her, like these people have their kids like burning cats and shit. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm just like, my child should know.
But is it because you are more comfortable having these types of conversations, you think, than most parents are? Because to me, I look at it and I see a fear of the child coming and asking the parent questions, and there are parents that are afraid to answer difficult questions.
But like what?
That they themselves don't have opinions on, or they themselves haven't come to terms with like knowing how to answer certain questions.
But like, I don't know. Like, children are simple. They ask simple questions. This kid the other day was like, are you a boy or a girl? And I was like, some days a boy and some days a girl. And I'm not sure. Not always sure. Just to like play back with him a little bit and be like, no.
But you don't think I think most would say that's confusing to a child.
I think if you are someone who's non-binary, you feel a spectrum of gender. So my response to him was, thank you for asking. That was like super brave of you. He was like 8, but it was just, I would rather him have some kind of contact and interaction than feel too scared to ask or judged. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of like people being shamed for asking questions. Okay. I mean, that's just me. Like if people want to ask questions, I'm like, it's fine. Like I'm not.
But there's and I think that's a great nuance, right? And like, where is the right place to ask some of these difficult questions? And I guess for children, it's a lot easier, right? You're going to a parent, you're going to an adult to ask questions. But when we take it then back to someone like J.K. Rowling and you take it to Twitter.
She wasn't asking a question, though. That was a judgment veiled as a question.
Judgment veiled as...
That was not, that was like classic white lady feminism. That just was. It was like, you know, I'm just asking a question. Like, why should they get to whatever she asked? What was the tweet? I don't know.
I don't have it off the top of my head, but the original tweet was, it was asking, what if we're wrong to be allowing children to getting sex changes at a young age, right? Before they know what sex they are, or the gender they identify as, and so on, making permanent decisions to their body. That was some form of that question.
Yeah, I think that was still doesn't feel like a real question. It felt like a judgment veiled as a question to me.
And do you think it's because of her platform and because of who she is and so on that it makes the difference?
I mean, I've listened to a couple of the interviews. I think she's pretty ruthless about her perspective. And she also seems to want to be hated, by the way. Like, she said something like, I don't have a legacy. I don't care about a legacy. Like, anyone else who's like busted their ass that hard, took her 17 years to write that first book, would be like, I'm caring about my legacy. like if you're Michael Jordan, you're like, my legacy, my legacy, my legacy. Do you know what I'm saying? She was like very self-hating and definitely not concerned because she has self-hatred. It's very clear. She does not love herself. I mean, I can hear it in her voice when she's talking. It's like, he took my keys away and he wouldn't let me in my own house. And then I ended up in the streets, and like, she's confronted with like her own trauma, and it's like, it's unresolved.
But if we look at people who have platforms like her and say that asking those questions publicly is wrong and it's agenda-based, how do we then prevent groupthink? How do we then prevent constantly people saying that they have to just adhere with what is the public statement and that, you know, what is normal? Because we see that throughout history, right? Groupthink becomes highly problematic. We end up with genocides when groupthink is a prevalent norm in society. So like, how do you balance allowing people to ask those difficult questions when they have platforms and, you know, saying like, acknowledging that they're going to get the hatred and so on, but, you know, requiring that to then prevent a society that defaults to groupthink?
We have seen a zillion million people come forward with like humility and I'm trying to think of like interviews from everyone from like, I don't know, Robert De Niro to Jane Fonda. Like, people are able to come to the table and say like, I genuinely don't understand. I acknowledge that I don't understand. I have thoughts and questions, and I am looking for, you know, a way to sort of interact and have a connection to figure this out. Like, that's you tweeting something to the internet when you're J.K. Rowling is not you trying to figure that out. That's like, she could have called 5 people and been like, I don't get it. Someone help me understand. Like, she can hire fucking, you know, all these people, like they have diversity and inclusion consultants they hire to help them like get woke. Right. I know those people who do that job, like for celebrities. And I'm saying like J.K. Rowling on her yacht could have hired someone to be like, explain to me like transgenderedness, and she didn't do that. She just she didn't do that. I mean, most of the people in this like,
except
even
the person that I believe she was interviewing or speaking with in that was like, I believe a transgender individual, and it was, I think one of the questions that she actually asked was like, how many people do you actually know in the transgender community? And then that kind of like tripped J.K. Rowling up a little bit, and I think that's a good point, right? Like, that's the main thing. Is like when you actually meet people who are part of the community that you're speaking about, is like incredibly important.
I mean, I'm sure she has no trans friends. I bet you she has no gay friends, queer friends. I bet you she doesn't have a lot of diversity in her life. Do you? I mean,
she speaks on it a little bit in that, but yeah, she kind of dances around the...
She doesn't. I can feel it in her tone. It's like literally like, I know her. She's just in her own bubble. And so she's just like...
And how do we pull people out of their bubble? Because if that's the problem, she's not alone in that. People being in echo chambers today.
But do we all need to be in the same bubble?
No, but to create...
Because I like my bubble. I'm kind of into my bubble. It's like a fine bubble. And I'm kind of like, you're in your bubble, I'm in my bubble. Do we all need to be in the same bubble?
Well, I think that if we don't sometimes find make concentric bubbles that
Yes.
like we can find overlap in, then we end up not being able to see progress in society. If we all just end up in our own individual bubbles, there's no consensus to then say, okay, we need to go and support the Iranian people who are dying on the streets and solve that problem, right? Or to say like, okay, and again, all these topics are controversial, but like, to say like we need to fight communism and stop Russia from taking over Ukraine and so on, right? Like there's some amount of consensus that's helpful. And like, that's why I think challenging those echo chambers is important.
I mean, we have none of that consensus. We live in a time of zero consensus right now.
Because we all live in our own echo chambers, our own bubbles, no?
I think it's echo chambers. I think it's more than that. I think it's capitalism. It's just money.
Can we blame capitalism on everything?
Absolutely, you can. 100%. It's to me, like, even though I am a professional capitalist, I am aware, like, I am keenly aware now that when I think about who my investors are and who their investors are and how this all works, it's, these wars are subsidized, people are profiting off of them, right? And it's, you have a wealth gap now that is the most obscene we have ever seen, ever. It's insane. You literally have 26 people who are, you know the stats,
yes.
Like 26 people are 50% of the world's net worth. Right? There's like 26 people, right? And so difficult for common people to make differences when the economics are so disheveled and off balance. There's such an imbalance. And I think I wouldn't know where to solve any of these problems today because you've got companies, which are essentially governments, instituting policies. You're seeing it with everything from AI to healthcare to education to the war. So it's like you have such a thing as dividends, and dividends are like what people are voting for. And so I think I've come to a place where I'm like, wow, we live in a world that's so off kilter that yes, it's creating personal friction, and we understand that friction is, canceling or virtue signaling or racism or homophobia or classism, all these things. But so much of this, I think, is about the imbalance of power. Because I think that the vacuuming of power has created like a aura of unjustness that everyone's just irritated by in this, I would say, over the past, call it 5 years. It's clear. Like the have-nots will never have. It will be very difficult for a lot of people.
Yes. I'm not here to be like a capitalism defender here, but
I love it.
But I will say this, right? Like the defense would be that it's the greatest mechanism for pulling the most amount of people from poverty and giving them resources out of any other economic model we've seen. Alternative. That's better.
I think it was when we were all paying taxes, and those taxes went to go pay for public services, and those were like schools and educations and hospitals. But like I think Europe has it more correct than we do, which is like there are fundamentals.
Right.
Right?
We're both Californians. We both have wanted a bullet train for a long time. The taxpayer dollars have gone towards it. Never happened. Wasted dollars. That is unfortunately the reality of our government.
I'd
right?
like people to have healthcare. I would like people to be able to go to schools. Like I'd like children to have like music class and sports, and like I think we live in a world like fuck yeah, people are canceling because they're irritated. Like they're just like eggs are $12 and like everything's too expensive, and everyone's just, so what's free? Sitting on the internet and just hate. It's like, that's free. It's now entertainment to just shit on someone and enjoy their demise on the Shade Room and like just watch it go bananas on TMZ. And everyone's like, that's enjoyable to you. And so it's like an adrenaline kind of jump that everyone's getting from the like, weren't you bored for the past 4 years watching Biden? You were bored. You were just like bored. You were like...
I think it was peaceful.
It was, but I'm saying even for myself, I had become addicted to like watching the news and being like, what did he say today? Because it was just so much addiction to Jerry Springer politics. And so I just think even if the world got to a place where we're all going to have civil discourse, then we're going to be like, wait, so then why do we all not have the same shot, the same resources? Why are we not all set up in the same way? And I think that for sure that's playing into all of this. It's a piece of it.
And I think actually AI brings a lot of these conversations up now, right? Like there's been this, I've talked about it, but I've started talking about it only because I've seen people like Elon talk about it and so on. This intersection of this idea that if AI ends up displacing a lot of people out of jobs and work, that universal basic income becomes more important than ever before. But that if you add that into people's lives, there's still the added challenge then that they've lost their meaning from life. They've lost their work and so on. And so, yeah, I do question then, like, how much of that then becomes about what's wrong in our society and so on. And part of me thinks that that's actually, it moves us towards people caring, and that there's not a lot of time to care right now about your child's education, the way that things are.
We live in a country, like, average person in this country gets like 2 weeks off a year.
Right.
They don't do that in Europe. They're getting, like, the worst case scenario is 6 weeks off a year. Like parental leave, maternal leave, like you're a person who has to take care of a dying parent leave. Like, we don't have any of that. Like, you have to take care of someone in this country, you're fucked. You have to be sick, you're fucked. You have to have a baby, you're fucked. You have to, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, yes, we live in the most angry society because, like, as a whole, people are pissed when they're not taken care of. You know that. So it's like, in general, when people are pissed all the time, I have to assume that, like, their Klarna or whatever they're using to, like, pay for shit that they don't really have the money for. Like, credit card payments, or balances are through the roof. People aren't paying for their student debt. Like, mortgages are in default. Like, we're living beyond our means.
When basic needs are not met, then yeah.
Yes. I mean, like, I went to TED last year and that's all they talked about was, like, basic fundamental needs of human beings and what it takes for us to actually be sane to each other.
You work in venture capital. I build startups. I have a startup incubator. Are we wasting our time working on things that are just not working on solving people's basic needs?
No, we're totally working on solving people's needs.
Yeah?
If, like, all the things I like to invest in are, like, figuring out how to make tools and technology accessible to, like, everyday humans. Like, I think about things like Shopify, and, like, a decade ago, you'd have to pay like $500,000 to, like, build a company, build a website. I just got my hair cut. My hairdresser was like, I'm only going to cut hair like 1 day a week now. And I'm like, why? And he's like, well, I figured out that, like, we needed a soap dispenser in the shop and we didn't have one. So I got a guy to make this, like, little metal soap dispenser with an Aesop soap thing. And then I realized I could sell them on Amazon, and I'm selling like $80,000 a month of these soap dispensers to, like, Barry's Boot Camp and all this other shit, because people don't want to order 10,000 units from China, so they can order 500 units for me. This is like a hairdresser that now can go for whatever, $200 a month, build a Shopify. And he's like, I don't cut hair that much anymore. So it's like, these technologies and tools are, like, what I think allow people to do and create different things for themselves, different opportunities. I used to think about, when I was a kid, my dad had this, like, wall of servers for, like, his email. Like, just to have an email server, you had to have, like, I don't even know how much money to have, like, your own server. And now you're like, I just have a Google Suite, or I just have, like, a Yahoo. So it's like, I think having access to all this stuff is what allows a lot of people access to their time and resources where previously they wouldn't. So I'm still optimistic that technology is helpful.
Okay.
You know?
I'm in that boat with you. That's what I convince myself of every day when I wake up and do my work.
It's totally helpful. Like, you used to have to hire, like, a graphic designer. Now you have Canva. You have a million apps on your phone that, like, do photo editing. Like, think about all the things that, like, 10 years ago you'd have to hire someone that went to school for it to do, that you now can be like, cool, zoom in, zoom out, change the filter.
But that's what a lot of fear in today's society is, right? Like, people are like, now that job doesn't exist anymore. Now that person is unemployed. Now that person's basic needs aren't met anymore. And we're having this conversation as the writers are on strike, and, you know, it's like, we're in that era.
I mean, if you're innovative and willing to grow, I think there will always be opportunities. If you're like, I have been a coal miner for my entire life and generationally that's all I've been doing, then someone should be willing to invest to retrain people. People are smart. People are willing to be trained. People are willing to work. Like, You just have to give them the educational opportunity to get reacclimated to whatever the 2.0 is of their profession. I mean, we're not going to just like throw away millions of people just because like they don't understand. Like no one understood the internet when it first happened either. And when mobile phones came out and iPhone 1 happened, like a zillion people were like, I'm not doing that. Your parents, everyone's parents were like, I'm not putting my credit card into Uber. And then there are people now who like drive an Uber. There are people now who own like many Uber cars and rent those Ubers to others. I know those people. They're like in their 60s. They're like, I have a whole fleet of Ubers and I rent them to others. Those same people 10 years prior were like, I would never give my credit card to a phone. So human beings are extremely intelligent and capable of being trained. You just have to have a system that wants to train them.
Right.
You know?
The most popular trainers of today's world, I think, end up being influencers. And one of those, especially influencers of mindset, and you and I have a common influencer we like a lot, which is an author, Ryan Holiday, right? And like he writes about stoicism and philosophy and that being incredibly helpful. I think he's a healthy type of influencer, and you know, in the sea of the toxically positive, I think he's real and relatable in that way. But there's a couple people who I think are worth talking about, especially in the lens of masculinity and modern masculinity. One of them being Andrew Tate and another being Jordan Peterson. You know both these people roughly, I'm sure, right?
Ish.
And so what's interesting about, not Jordan Peterson per se, though he's interesting because they don't like selling his book in certain places. I think he takes advantage of like the young boy by saying like, they don't want you to be masculine. They're trying to change who you are naturally and instinctively. And he actually takes advantage of that like little bit of anger that exists today of like trying to, I don't know, feel like you're not heard or not in this. I don't know. I'm curious what you think about this. Like these types of influencers who are the educators.
I've never followed any of their work just because that is clearly not my...
Sure. But you're raising two boys, right?
Yep.
And these are like the influencers. Like
They won't be influencing my kids. I mean, I'm sorry. Like,
it's so easy to say that though,
I
as a
don't
parent,
think
like
so.
to say I'm going to control what my kid. I mean, like
I won't control, but I would be really surprised only because when I look at the people who like those guys' content, the insecurity and that energy of like beating your chest, like, you know, like these guys are making content like, oh, like this trans woman wants to be on the swim team. Like, do you think, or like they did a video recently, I think it was like, there was like some plus size person that wanted, she thought there, I don't know, did you guys see this? She wanted there to be a skinny tax where like if plus size people had to pay for more money for a seat than skinny people should have to, I don't know. It was like they should have to like essentially give money back or something like that. It was like some ridiculous video that I just scrolled right past it. But like, I think those guys they're like toxic masculine energy. Like it is what it is. I mean, we've had that like for a billion zillion years. I don't think it's new. And you're worried that like young men are going to see this content and like...
My worry is that because the greatest educators I think right now actually are these social media platforms, like that's even building an education startup right now, like that's the challenge. Everyone's like, I learn new things and skills through TikTok.
I mean,
you know,
those guys
that
are
like
just doing it for the clicks though. Like I think people
but
need to...
they're the same thing as Ryan Holiday is to me and you, right? They are like to these kids and
they
to
have
young
way bigger
people.
audiences. They're way more clickable. Those guys are salacious, right? Like they make that kind of content because they know it will drive huge amounts of headline, it will trend, and they're getting ad dollars for it. Like they're really smart. Like if you wanted to be very, very successful on YouTube, you would make a bunch of videos that were terrible and mean and criticizing humans, and it'd start trending on Twitter, and you would just turn on your ad pre-roll and you would start making money on that. And those guys make money for being dicks. They know that.
But people relate to it. That's the difference.
People are mean. Like inside themselves, they need a vehicle for their own meanness. So they're just like, you know, I don't want to be mean, but I'm going to watch this guy be mean. And that's, you know, they get off on that. I mean, that's like what I'm saying. It's like the trauma porn of like watching another person like being mean. Like that's like when everyone's like going bananas about Kanye or going banana, but like going like who's the new sort of thing. it's like I'm always hesitant to like jump in there. I don't jump in there because I'm aware of the fact that like every single one of these publications that is running that headline is getting paid. They're actually making money on that. Like the real question is like, you want civil discourse, like you better convince the media companies to stop monetizing the lack of civil discourse. Like they want, this is like what people watch, and it's because of that.
Yeah.
That's why there's like what, it was like $10 billion spent on the last presidential election because people enjoyed the fight so much, like the Coliseum of words.
Yeah.
I don't know. So like, are those people influential? Yes. Can they be toxic? Yes. Should people be scared that their kids are watching it? Sure. Yes. But like, people should be scared of a million zillion things. There's a lot of things to be scared of.
Yeah. I suppose I'm not advocating for the fear, but I think of like the ease with which people want to cancel those people that end up becoming highly popular. And I think it's important to look at why they become highly popular. I'm in this realm of like pushing for a modern masculinity that is not like what you see from traditional toxic masculinity. But there's a push against that now, which is like people saying that, no, it's too woke, it's not relatable, it's not attainable, and so on. And I think it's important to hear the voices of dissent then, you know, and like entertain them at least to say like, okay, let's see why.
I mean, to me, I'm just like, if you want to be like caveman vibes and like roll like that, like to me, I'm just like, that's cool. Like, it's not my job to like, I can't come into your home and tell you like, just like I don't want you to tell me what to do. Like, if someone wants to watch that content and date a guy like that and be that energy, to me, I don't feel like it's my job to morally police like those people. It's fine. I just don't want to eat with them. I just don't want to. Like, I'm not a like, let's all just fucking hang out kind of situation.
Do you maintain a circle then that is like a reinforcing echo chamber?
Yes, totally.
You don't think that's harmful?
I feel like I'm gay, brown, and queer. Like, I feel like I deal with enough harm that I don't need to like put myself in harm's way of like, you know, I know my friends who are Republicans. I know my friends who voted for Trump. I know my friends who like don't believe, I know who those friends are. And like, we talk about it, we discuss it. But like, I'm also not going to like go on vacation with them, right? You know, like, but we're still friends. Like, I respect them as a human, but like, we just don't have the same lived experience. Like, my politics are informed by my personal experience. Their politics are motivated by tax brackets and advantages of like.
Or also their personal experience, right?
Sure. But for them, mostly it's about their taxes, right? For them, it's like, that's why they all moved to Miami. All my friends moved, all of them. Yes. Literally millions and zillions of my friends were like, dude, you got to go to Miami. I'm like, dude, why? And they're like, because there's no taxes there. I'm like, DeSantis is there. Like, I'm not going to Miami.
Yeah.
And they don't care. They're like, these people are the same people who are like, all lives, you know, all the things matter. I'm like, you live in Miami, like you live in DeSantis land. Like, you know, he doesn't believe in COVID. They didn't care. They literally didn't care because for them, they're like, I'm saving 27% state tax. So for me, I live in Florida. I'm just saying, like, they're motivated by a principle for them. For me, I will pay higher taxes to live in a state that I know honors my marriage, honors my relationship to my child, like, you know, right? I'm just saying for them, they were like, that's not as valuable to me. I will pay more money for rights and protection. They will move to places for better taxes. And we are still cool.
And I think that's the part that's important, right? Is like still being cool because they still live in the same country. You still vote in this similar elections, like at the federal level, same elections at the federal level, not at the state level.
We're never going to be on the same side because we're just not on the same, we have commonalities.
I think that's hurtful.
Why though?
Say that we're never going to be on the same side. We're never capable of having the same opinion.
None of those people were like in the street in Battery Park during the Muslim ban. And I was hurt by that, you know?
Did you have those conversations with them?
Of course. But like at some point, I think the expectations of like, I don't have expectations of changing people anymore. I might inspire you. I might help you think about some stuff. But like, I'm not here to be like, you need to like know about Breonna Taylor. Like you did like
Because that doesn't work though either.
There's this professor at Smith, her name is Loretta Ross. She writes about calling in versus calling out. I find it to be super fucking powerful. I believe the most important, powerful way of impacting another person is by calling them in and bringing them into. So if you want to cancel someone rather than cancel them, like, many people who have been publicly canceled will tell you that they have sat in private meetings with me for me to explain to them why the way they behave and the things they do are problematic. I am known for being that person. I sit down with a lot of people, notable people that you would know, and explain why it is that the ways that they're moving just don't work anymore. And I think that those relationships have engendered such a level of trust that over decades and years, so much of my work, I've gone on to be able to build nonprofits doing that. I've gone on to build companies with them doing that, because there's no greater advocate than a person whose mind has been changed. It's like you look at people who are vegans, who are previously carnivores. They're like Bill Clinton, like, I'm a fucking vegan. It's like that guy was a hardcore carnivore, like now he's a vegan. He's like an advocate. So it's like when someone pivots because you called them in and you I hate to be like, I'm here for I'm not the keep it civil, but I am a seduce them with love. Okay. And I feel like if you do that, you can then convert them to be on your side. And I am a good recruiter.
Yeah.
I'd rather recruit.
It's disarming people, right? Like, you disarm them with empathy, making them feel heard.
Totally.
And meeting them where they're at.
Totally. I'm known for sitting down with the most, I'll never forget, a couple years ago, I was a BeautyCon in New York, and someone was like, Kellyanne Conway's here and she really wants to meet you. And I was like, wow, okay, this is gonna be really awkward, super awkward. Okay, interesting. And I had a verbal altercation with her at this Forbes conference where I had basically called her out for many fine people and supporting, Robert Mercer and Cambridge Analytica and why the American people should not know about Russia's involvement with the election. It's all on camera. It was a big internet moment.
Okay.
In 2018 or something like that. And so, someone grabbed me and they're like, she really wants to meet you. She didn't know it was me. So when I came up, she was like, she didn't remember. And I was like, do you remember me? I'm the person who called you out in front of everyone, And she was like, my girls are the biggest BeautyCon fans ever. They've been coming to BeautyCon for years. And, I just wanted to meet the person behind it. And it was such a weird moment because in my head, I was like, oh, wow, Kellyanne Conway's children are at BeautyCon to see Cardi B. And I'm infiltrating Kellyanne Conway's brain right now. And we stayed in touch. We're not friends, but there are times where I'm like, you have a role in this and you can do better. And these are the things that should be being discussed right now. And I don't know that I can change her mind, but I think you have to infiltrate.
Yeah.
I don't know that you can change someone's mind in such a blunt way. You have to wear them down.
Yeah, I see that. I think it's important to make them feel heard and understood, you get them and what their perspective is, to then be able to...
I don't get them, and I'll be I do not get you, zero. But I get that you still want to try and talk to me, which means you want to get me. So whatever it is that you're trying to get, I will give it to you. But there's no part of me that's trying to get whatever's inside of you, because whatever's inside of her, I don't want that. I don't want that inside of me. Why would I do that to myself? I would never do that to myself.
To make people feel understood, so you can do your part then to meet them halfway.
Not. If you are that energy, I'm not trying to get inside of you. I will be here for you as you are trying to evolve out of that skin into something different. But me understanding why you create an entire business around
I get it. You're not a therapist.
Yeah, I can't help her. She's
I get it. But to me, I think of whether it's the J.K. Rowlings
one of the most crazy
world.
things we've ever seen. That's fine. But
Yeah.
There's no world in where, if you go in there, because the thing is, if you try and go in there, you might lose yourself. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, is because when I was younger, I'd try to like get in there. And then you would get in there and you'd be like, oh shit, like I just lost my own voice, my own agency, my own perspective because I'm so busy trying to get into this other person's skin. But like for me, like whatever possesses you to be mean and evil to another person, it's not something that's gonna become natively part of my body, but I'm willing to share like what's inside of me that allows me to just, because I don't hate anybody. Like, I do not wake up and I'm like, you know who I hate? This Republican. I don't hate them. But if they hate me, like, I'm willing to give them a chance to evolve out of that hate, but I don't want to go into the hate. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
It's too, like, I have too much to lose for myself.
Fair enough.
You know?
I think for myself, there's a curiosity of like...
Totally, but you're young and you have that like intent.
It hasn't been beaten out of me yet, I suppose.
you want to see the darkness, but I've seen it. I've seen it inside of that darkness. And the thing is, it's uglier than you ever imagined. They're fucking dark in there. What has them behaving like that? Like, what has a young boy like innocent, like what has a young man like filming a young girl losing her virginity without her consent and putting it up on Pornhub? What has him doing that? That girl, and then these girls, they
Bad
go...
parents, a troubled upbringing,
You're
like...
a fucked up person inside. You are...
Yeah, but there's circumstances that got them to be that person.
I come from a very fucked up childhood too. I have all the things. I have all the things I can give it to you.
There's no checkbox of like,
It's
I'm
not,
qualified to be bad and I
but-
chose not to be bad,
but when
and that
you
makes
do
everyone
something
else
that
that
is
chose to be
so-
bad.
It's like when that is like, I mean, that's like an evil thing. I would say that that's like, I was watching this thing and I'm like, wow, I cannot believe Pornhub doesn't take this content down. It's like actually making these girls,
Sure, that's bad.
They're young girls who literally like, normally they do lose their virginity. They think it's private. It's not private. It's on Pornhub and they won't take it down. And these are like grown women now who are like 24, 25. And every time they go to a job interview, someone fucking sends this video to their boss. Can you imagine what that does to a young... So to me, like, there's not much I can do for that person who does that kind of stuff because that's just, it's like evil. You can know about like knowing other people's sides, but also know the difference between someone who's just kind of troubled and someone who's straight up evil.
There are bad faith actors.
There are bad faith actors, and you cannot change those people.
How do you identify those people?
People who are willing to literally lie, cover up killing, other people's killings. I mean, it's like you look at the history of things done in this country against women, minorities, and the amount of people who've looked the other way when it happens, like it's problematic and troubling. And some of those people truly do it because they feel like that person deserved it. So I think you have to know, you know, is J.K. Rowling evil? No, she seems problematic and troubled. But then there are some people who are evil, who are bad. I mean, if you believe in good, which I can tell that you do, you believe in greatness, then you do have to believe that there's also the other side. And the other side is
bad.
Like, is Putin. Can you convince Putin through like civil discourse to try to be a better human being?
And I can't, just like I can't convince the mullahs and the Iranian government to be...
No, you literally can't, because whatever possesses a person to take a girl, beat her to death because her scarf wasn't on, I can't, there's no like me, like I want to hear your side. Oh, I get your shit was hard for you. Like,
But that's like 1% of the people.
I mean,
I think they're really like, sometimes, I mean, look, some of them are in power and they have like the ability to, you know, inflict their evil on other people at scale. But I don't think that it's the majority of people. And I think that's what I advocate for, is that like, even if there are people that have some bad in them, you can cultivate the good.
You can, as long as it's not like dark.
Agreed.
Dark. You don't want to like, you know,
You don't, spend a lifetime
hanging out with like KKK members. Like you're like, it's good. Like you're just this way.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Yeah, like I don't know what happened to you that has you be this way, but like I'm stay away.
Right.
You know?
There's just the like Oprah inspiration in me of like, she sat down with KKK members and convinced them to leave and like dedicate their lifetime to pulling
I want to
people
see
out.
where they are now. You know, like I don't know if that's true. Like that might have been great TV.
They came out on her show 10 years later, but you're right, it might have been great TV.
We're not sure. Like, I mean,
I don't have the evidence.
I'm not saying that it's not possible. I'm just saying I bet you anything it cost her something inside.
It
Personally
did.
and emotionally.
She
I
said
don't
she would
think-
never do that again.
That's what I'm saying. It wasn't free for her to do that. She gave something of herself that was at a cost. I think that's why people love her so much, because she's done it at scale. Yeah. But like, you can tell from her work over the past decade, like, she's tired. Yeah. Do you mean like, because she's not doing it the same way she was, because that she's old now. She's like, fuck, I'm not gonna go mess with like in the face of evil the way it was. You do that when you like believe that you can change the world. I think I'm more a believer that I can just change myself. And if I change myself, then I will avoid doing any further damage to other humans. And then if that butterfly effect, like if my son is a good person and then he has a good, you know what I'm saying? Like, yes. I'm a big believer in the butterfly effect, but that's why I do the Iran stuff. Because it's like, people are like, how are you going to take down the Islamic Republic? I'm like, well, it's an idea and I put energy behind it and I raise money for it and I put out content around it. But like, ideas become realities. And I'm a bigger believer of like thinking through that lens than I am putting myself in spiritual harm's way, like, or energetic harm's way, you know? Like, people are like, don't you want to sit down with Donald Trump? I'm like, I don't, you know? Because I fundamentally don't believe that inside himself he believes in a higher power or anything bigger than himself. So, like, if someone fundamentally doesn't believe in the universe, it would be difficult for me to, like, relate to them on any level. Is that weird?
No, I think it's fair. To me, there's like, and the reason I wrote this book is on that same vein, right? Like, if I put energy behind this and inspire some people, if I share stories from my life, hopefully it creates a little domino effect. 2 more people, you know, can put effort into changing lives, inspiring others, and same thing. Maybe that creates a movement and there's some real impact in people's lives.
I mean, you have to try.
You have to try.
And you're young, so you have to try a lot.
You have to care.
You have to care like so much, because the rest of us are like...
Tired of caring.
We're not tired. It's more that just... Like, when I see people going apeshit on the internet, I could stick my hand in there and I'm just going to like lose my hands right now. Or I could let everyone calm down, contact them 5 days later and be like, why are you trashing this person when you know their mom, their mom's mom, their brother, their neighbor, you know they just lost their job, you know, like, right. Whatever it is, like, you should not do that. You know, like, I'm not going to call you out in public, but like, you know, that was whack.
Yes.
And that kind of...
Yeah, I mean, that's like building of culture and society, right? Like, that's how you build communities, is not by saying like, oh, you voted for this person, I'm never going to speak to you again, like unfriend me on social media. I know zillions of millions of people voted for Trump, and I still hang out with those friends, because those people are the least Trump people, because they're like, they just voted for their wallet, you know? I don't think they voted for Trump because they're like, they just wanted to make America great again. They just wanted their taxes good again. But either which way, I'm still not going on vacation with them. I get it.
Because
keeping the peace in your head.
It's just like, because, yeah, we're not the same.
I get it. But I love that you also are still trying to, you know, rally people together behind what you do believe in.
I do. I think you have to. I just don't think I'm going to like give my limbs.
Yes. Thank you for doing this with me.
You're welcome.
Moj, everyone. Incredible. You can find her at Moj on all social media.
On all social media.
MOJ. Thank you again for doing this with me.
Thanks for having me. I hope you had fun.
I did. This was great.
So proud of you.
Thank you.
So keep doing it. We're going to all be excited to watch you just stick your hands inside the mouth of every lion.
Inside the fire.
We're going to all just be like, we would not do that. We would not do that. We're gonna send you to talk to Kanye. You're going to experience... Why not? You're going to just have civil discourse. Take him a hat, keep it civil.
Well, the harder part is getting society to forgive like someone and say like, you know, mental health is... believe that people can have lapses in mental health and that, you know, they can evolve. It's hard. It's hard to give people that chance, but